Hello everyone, I'm Jodie, and the paper I choose today is Effects of Video Caption Modes on English Listening Comprehension and Vocabulary Acquisition using Handheld Devices. Okay, so here's the table of contents. We'll start from introduction, move on to literature review, method, and finally we'll talk about the experimental results and discussions and conclusions. So first, let's start with introduction. So most EFL countries want their children to learn English as early as possible. And since this paper was written by Taiwanese scholars, they also stated that the Ministry of Education in Taiwan wants elementary school to put emphasis on English listening first. And also the popularity of various mobile devices and wireless networks make students to use these emerging learning materials or channels anywhere at any time. So in the future, students will eventually be equipped with a mobile device installed with proper learning tools. And because this paper was written in 2014, I think after 7 years passed, we can see that most of the students they cannot live without their smartphones. Yeah, but they may not have the proper learning tools installed in their smartphones. Okay. And the aim of the study is to explore whether different display mode of captions and subtitles result in different degrees of effectiveness in the listening comprehension and vocabulary acquisition of elementary school students. Okay, so here's a literature review. Also, in the previous research, multimedia learning materials, it seems that they are more useful than traditional paper-based instructions. For example, video. Video can provide visual and contextual and non-verbal input for the foreign language learners with simultaneous visual and oral stimuli. And students have to receive a great quantity of comprehensible input. That means that they have to listen to a lot of things, and at the same time, the context they must understand the concept. Otherwise, they will learn nothing. So in this study, here are some terms explained. Subtitle means on-screen Chinese text combined with an English soundtrack, and captions means on-screen text, English text combined with an English soundtrack. And they also provide bilingual subtitling, which could be defined as on-screen text in both the student's native language and the target language combined with the target language soundtrack, which means Chinese and English captions and subtitles. Okay, so the previous research shows that combining captions with audiovisual material is a very effective method to enhance the listening and reading comprehension of a second language, because visualize the auditory information of the foreign language will make the students to hear and see the videos, the same context of videos at the same time. So providing native subtitles will help learners to enhance their pronunciation too. Okay, so we have mobile assisted language learning, which is called MAL. They provide students with rich, real-time, convenient, and contextual learning opportunities. So learners, they may pay most attention to captions, followed by video and audio, and acquire most word by associating these things with visual images. So caption video can help to enhance the recognition of written word forms and the learning of word meaning. Also, non-caption video can improve listening comprehension and facilitate recognition of oral word forms. And there are different modes of captions and subtitles inset in the MAL video material, which we will talk about later. Okay. So the researchers, they divide learners into two different learning styles in this study. The first one is visual learner, which means they rely more on the text, for example, the captions and pictures in the videos, while the verbal learners, they pay more attention on the audio input. Okay, now let's look at method. So the participants are 3 classes of 5th graders in elementary school in Taiwan, and all of them were categorized at level C, which means their English is low achievement. And we have 3 groups. The first one is control group, and the second one is experimental group 1, and followed by experimental group 2. And this research lasted for a month, and they used PDAs, which means personal digital assistant. It's something like a tablet or a smartphone. And the control group, they watch videos without any English captions or Chinese subtitles. For experimental group 1, they have full English captions and Chinese subtitles of only the target vocabulary. For experimental group 2, they have both English captions of the target vocabulary and Chinese subtitles of the target vocabulary. So here's the procedure. They first have a pretest, which is their results of midterm exams, and then they were categorized as visual and verbal dimension. And the treatment or the research lasts for 4 weeks. And finally, the students received technology acceptance model questionnaire and had focus group interviews. Okay, so here's the difference between experimental group 1 and 2. So the left one is experimental group 1. They have the full English sentence but only a target vocabulary in Chinese. And for group 2, they only have target vocabulary without the whole sentence. And the researcher thinks that there's no need to provide fast forward or slow play functions in this research. Okay, so this is how the research was conducted. And they use 3 kinds of research tools. The first one is to measure the students' learning style to determine which they are visual or verbal. The second one is learning achievement test. And the final one is the questionnaire to measure students' technology acceptance. Okay, so the pretest, they have some test, which was their midterm exam, and to test their listening comprehension and vocabulary capability. Okay, and for post-test, they also have listening comprehension and vocabulary acquisition of the listening unit. Okay, and then they use this questionnaire to determine whether students are visual or verbal style learners. Okay, and the questionnaire it contains 3 dimensions: ease of use, perceived usefulness, and perceived satisfactions. Okay, so here are the results. So the object of this study is to examine the effectiveness of the different captions and the subtitle modes of the students' listening comprehension and vocabulary acquisition. So here are some numbers. Okay, so significant difference were found between the vocabulary acquisition score of the experimental group and those of the control group. However, there are significantly better learning achievements in English vocabulary than those without captions. So experimental group have better learning achievement. Okay, here are some analysis results. And all of the group had made significant progress in listening comprehension and vocabulary acquisition, which complies with the previous researches. And 2 experimental groups had significantly better learning effectiveness than the control group, but all the groups had made progress each week. So here's the chart. Okay, and they also investigate the effect of different caption modes. Okay, here is also some analysis results. So for the students who prefer a visual style of learning, the researchers suggest that they should provide both English and Chinese words to them. and they tend to pay attention to the image or video input rather than relying on listening material. And children in the target group have similar performance in the listening comprehension to the students in the full caption group. And as for their acceptance of technology, it shows the high level of acceptance. And the study, yes, okay. So this is the descriptive statistics result of TAM for experimental groups 1 and 2. And finally, there's no remarkable difference between the two experimental groups on the 3 scales of the acceptance of technology. Okay. Finally, is discussion. Finally, the result shows that the target word strategy have better effects on vocabulary acquisition than on listening comprehension for low achievement elementary school students. And listening comprehension is different from those of previous studies carried out in universities. It is weird that the researchers put out a research conducted in university because it is obviously that university students will learn much more words than low achievement elementary school students. So I don't know why they post this study to make a compare-contrast. So conclusion is that this study suggests that a partial hidden caption mechanism can be used in an adaptive way that present a selective vocabulary with different degrees of difficulty based on the learning level of students. And as for the interview result, the students think that only target words are sufficient enough. And so in the future, maybe we can use only caption words for students. No need to provide the whole English translation. Well, but it's still based on the student's level. And they, of course, they are interested in the videos and games. And it shows that the use of mobile device is very important that motivates students to learn. And here is some interesting from the teacher's perception. The teacher worried that the students would spend a lot of time playing games. However, they made significant progress each week, so which changed the teacher's perception of using more technologies in students' learning. And the future research the researchers provide 5 possible ways for us to develop our research in the future. The first one is to use longer videos, and the second one is to determine which target groups we want the learners to learn. And the third one is longer test period. This only lasts for a month, so we can do maybe half a year or something like that. And the fourth one is compare the learning performance of PDA learners with our handheld devices. Maybe this may refer to smartphones or tablets. And the final one is that they want to establish caption processing tool freeware, so make more students have access to the caption tool. As for my perception, I think this paper is easy to read and it sounds very familiar to us because it was conducted by Taiwanese scholars. And also, I kind of can expect the experimental group will have better progress than the control group because from my current teaching experience, I also use Caption to teach students with low achievement school, and in this 2 months, I think that they have made some progress little by little, but it still can be perceived. So I think this is a very interesting paper, and the research design is very clear. Maybe in the future we can follow the future research directions proposed by these researchers and do our paper. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.